Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Gran Turismo 7. Now before we get into today's video, if I do sound a little bit under the weather, I do want to apologise in advance. It's just kind of that time of the year where everything's going about and we're probably all catching things left, right and centre. So yeah, apologies for that in advance. Now let's get into the video itself. We're going to carry on with our Group 1 car reviews, in which we review all of the Group 1 cars and hope to get a definitive ranking at the end. And up today is the SRT Tomahawk Group 1, a bit of a weird and wacky vehicle. So in terms of the car itself, it's going to cost 1 million credits, the typical price point for any of the Vision Gran Turismo cars. In terms of its overall PP rating, it comes in at 890.13, 693 brake horsepower, which just seems bizarre, you know, when you kind of think about that. This is a car that's based off of the Tomahawk itself, 950 kilograms, and funnily enough, it is still naturally aspirated, which just seems again quite bizarre considering the massive output that these Tomahawks typically get. So since this is a fantasy VGT Group 1, there is no history to talk about when it comes to this car. It is completely fictional at this point in time. It's not one of the, I guess, many VGTs that have actually gone on to become a real thing. So in terms of this version of the Tomahawk, it is one of 4. Now I feel like half of the Tomahawks are very much held in high regard, whereas 2 of them are very much kind of forgotten, and I think a lot of people will probably forget that even in the game, that being this one that you're seeing here and the GTS R1. In terms of the Tomahawk X and the Tomahawk S, I think they're very much renowned, at least in terms of GT7, mainly because of their grinding potential from almost day 1 in the game. However, this one right here definitely seems to be a kind of forgotten little gem when it comes to GT7. It looks quite bizarre, obviously typically looking like a Tomahawk. They all kind of feature the same outward styling, obviously made much more aggressive due to the aero that's kind of strapped onto this thing. That huge rear wing and the big kind of shark thing coming off the rear end looks absolutely tremendous. I would actually go on to say that if this car is anything in comparison to the other Tomahawks, it's certainly the best looking one. I actually think they did a great job kind of turning the styling of the, you know, original Tomahawk into an actual race car. For me, especially with today's standards of the hypercar class, I could actually see something like this SRT Tomahawk working in the real world. It really doesn't kind of look too far-fetched from what we see in the current, you know, WEC calendar. So, you know, certainly something that sits a bit more in reality compared to some of the other Group 1 vehicles, especially in terms of, you know, those VGT ones that just seem very much out of place, mainly the likes of the Alpine and such. But for me, the Tomahawk VGT Group 1 certainly feels like something that could actually end up happening, obviously with the reduced power and such, and reaching a certain weight limit, a certain power output. It really does feel like it sits quite well, especially in terms of the modern day standard of what a Group 1 car would typically be now, which is obviously the hypercar class. So overall, from a styling standpoint, not only in my opinion is this the best looking of the Tomahawk, it certainly feels quite grounded in reality up to a modern day standard. It doesn't seem too far-fetched like some of the other VGT race cars. So let's talk about the performance itself. This is the main thing you're going to want to know. In terms of tyre life and fuel usage, it's certainly nothing absolutely remarkable, but it's definitely not terrible either. You know, it's certainly not the weakest in the class, which is always a good thing. The main thing you're going to want to be using these Group 1 cars is for those longer races, you know, typically grinding credits or just taking on those kind of 10 to 15 lap races where tyre wear and fuel usage is usually and typically bumped up to a ridiculous level, and this car will quite easily survive that. Recently I did go out and use this for one of the weekly events. I believe it was the one on Trial Mountain, and it did hold up very, very well, which is a big surprise for me. It was a car that I'd always kind of tested in more shorter runs, kind of assuming that it would absolutely shred its tyres and really serve no purpose, but that's definitely not the case. So tyre life, fuel usage, certainly not terrible here when it comes to this vehicle. Now let's talk about the actual performance, top speed, handling and all that good stuff. You know, these Tomahawks are renowned for being absolutely ridiculous, way beyond reality. The likes of the Tomahawk X is just the most ridiculous car in Gran Turismo history. Even the S, in terms of its, you know, qualifying for some of those American Cup races and stuff in GT7. Again, absolutely crazy and bizarre. And, you know, when it comes to this one, it definitely feels a little bit more toned down. Now, that's not to take away from this car. It has to be toned down to reach group specifications. Obviously, it is going to be outputting a lot less power than you would typically see with a Tomahawk vehicle. And obviously, when it comes to the handling and such, it isn't going to be absolutely pinpoint and zipping around all over the place like you'd see with the Tomahawk X. So if you go into it with that expectation, you're probably going to be disappointed. But I think most people will realize this is a group specification vehicle and isn't meant to be as ridiculous as the other Tomahawks, and I actually really enjoy this car for that. By no means is this a bad handling car. In fact, it is very easy to compare the handling on this vehicle to those 2016 LMP1 cars that we do also have in class, which are very, very good for the handling, very, very precise. So certainly no slouch, but it is definitely not up to the levels of the other Tomahawks. Don't expect it, and trust me, you won't be disappointed. In terms of pace, it really doesn't have the high top speed that you particularly expect from a Tomahawk either. I noticed on the straights it typically topped out from anywhere from 190 to 200 miles per hour. There's no DRS or anything like that. It's a fixed place wing, so that is what you're going to be topping out at, which definitely isn't too bad for a lot of the Group 1 vehicles, especially the VGTs and the more modern LMP machinery. It is typically only the Group C Legends that you will see topping out at over 200. So, you know, not too bad in terms of the top speed, but the advantage is this thing will reach that speed very, very quickly. Even though it isn't maybe getting the absolute kick of a hybrid boost like you typically see with those 2016 LMPs, this thing will still hit those high speeds very, very quick. Overall, in terms of performance, fantastic and easy to drive. Certainly recommend it if you've never tried it out just yet. So with the lap done, let's head over to the leaderboard. So when it comes to all of the Group 1 cars that we've currently reviewed so far, the Tomahawk does have the highest PP rating. However, that doesn't typically really mean anything. As you can see, there's a lot of mixture in terms of performance point rating and actual lap time. However, it does come overall second of the cars we've tested so far, second of the VGT ones, only behind the Peugeot L750R, and also tops out much quicker than any of the 2016 hybrid models and the hypercar by over 2.5 seconds. This thing, certainly no slouch at all, and definitely outperforming any expectations I actually had set out for it. So the SRT Tomahawk Group 1. Should you buy it? Absolutely. Should you give it a chance? Absolutely. It's a bit of a hidden gem and a bit of a forgotten masterpiece when it comes to the Tomahawk line of vehicles. If you've never tried it out, absolutely give this one a go. Now, massive thank you to all of my members: Louis Vieira, Old School Gamers, Crazy Cobra, JRO49, Cole Wyatt, Phil Wilmot, Dominic Saylor, Dan, Sean and Chris75572. Thank you so much for your continued support. Thank you to the viewer that's watching this for joining me on this Group 1 review series. We're definitely getting closer towards the end now, and hopefully we'll have that ranking done in around a month or so. I'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys. Peace.